In ancient Roman mythology, Janus, for whom the month of January is named, is the god of beginnings and endings, of transitions and time, of duality and doorways, which is actually a pretty broad job description if you think about it. Janus is always depicted as having two faces, since he looks both to the future and to the past. The backward-looking face is typically depicted as older, representing time gone by and experience. And the forward-looking face is depicted as younger, representing newness and possibility. With January and the coming of the new year, Janus stands at the doorway or the threshold, as do we, both inventorying our past and examining the future. Now, Janus is probably the great-grandfather of a more recent depiction of time's journey. Around the time of the new year, we often see a literary trope pop up in editorial cartoons, where Father Time is an allegory for the old year, having served his time and run his race. Think of Father Time as the backward-looking face. He is seasoned and tested and ready to pass the torch to a fresh, innocent baby new year, whose entire life stretches into an uncertain but generally hopeful future, the forward-looking face. As we see on this 1911 cover from the Saturday Evening Post, Father Time is depicted as smiling and grandfatherly, and the baby new year is rosy-cheeked and reporting for duty. But now look at this depiction from 100 years later in 2011. Somewhere, I don't know when, but it's unsurprising after a century of 2 world wars and a steady drumbeat of lesser wars and terrible acts of atrocity and inhumanity and natural disasters, which have always been there, but now we have 24-hour headline news. Somewhere after all of that, there emerged another way of depicting the turning of the year. Now Father Time looks frazzled and frayed at the edges, just happy to be giving up his shift. Preceding year has drained him of everything he has. And the baby new year looks anxious and unprepared. Don't know what's coming, but a lot of it probably won't be good. Good luck, kid, coping with climate change, with a destabilized global economy, with geopolitical strife and domestic political partisanship. Half pessimistic, half realistic, with a dash of world-weary cynicism thrown in, these more recent depictions of the New Year caution, don't ask for very much. Expect trial and hardship. Then you won't be very disappointed. I haven't made an in-depth study, but I see far more frazzled Father Times and shell-shocked baby New Years in more recent depictions of the annual passing of the hourglass. Which is why I find this New Year's editorial cartoon from Spanish editorial cartoonist Jose Maria Nieto so refreshing. Originally published in his native Spanish in 1916 and later translated into English versions, making the rounds on Facebook even today, the drawing depicts 2 little cartoon critters, one anxious and industrious, or one anxious and one industrious. And the anxious critter says, I don't see reasons to be optimistic. What will 2017 bring to us? And the smiling, industrious critter replies, I believe it will bring flowers. Really? Why? Asks the worrywart critter. I'm planting flowers, is the simple, hopeful response. I believe the coming year will bring flowers because I am planting flowers. As an act of hope, as an act of defiance, as an act of kindness, as an act of faith, as an act of stewardship, as an act of call it what you will, but I can do no other, I'm planting flowers. And therefore, I am expecting flowers. And it may seem simplistic and naively optimistic as we contrast the two cartoons. North Korea, Russia, Syria, global downturn, climate change versus I am planting flowers. But I want to claim otherwise. Let's look more deeply at Nieto's cartoon. I see no reason to be optimistic, says the one critter who is taking the counsel of fatalism and despair. I have no hope, so I'm doing nothing productive. Only fretting, only anguishing, only throwing up my hands. And in contrast, we have the other critter. I am doing something in order that there may be hope. Flowers, you see, are both literal and metaphorical here. Literally, if you plant flowers, you get flowers. Plant a rose bush, get roses. Plant chrysanthemums, get chrysanthemums. Plant daisies, and you get daisies. The flowers are also symbolic here. They represent anything that is an antidote to hurt or evil or despair. You know, the Latin taxonomy for daisy is Bellis perennis. It means, well, Bellis is from bella, meaning beautiful. And perennis is perennial, meaning lasting or eternal. So a daisy is named eternal beauty. But if you're a Latin geek like me, you know that the Latin for war is bellum. So bellum perennis, just a single syllable of difference, would be eternal conflict. And that's a world of difference. That's a different world altogether. In fact, a quick Google search revealed that someone else had already come up with the correlation. This is an original oil painting named Bellum Perennis by English artist David Platt. Straining horses, shattered chariot wheels, limbs locked forever in combat. So here's a contrast. Eternal conflict or eternal beauty? Expect what you plant. Now, all of this is biblical, by the way. The message of expect what you plant or reap what you sow. I've cherry-picked some passages just to illustrate the concept. From Job, as I've seen, those who plant iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. Bellum perennis. In contrast, from Hosea, sow for yourselves righteousness. Reap steadfast love. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, that he may come and rain righteousness upon you. And Paul writes in Galatians, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for you reap whatever you sow. So let us not grow weary in doing right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up. I expect flowers. So then, let us work for the good of all, the good of all, the good of all, and especially for those of the family of faith, writes Paul. Now a word. These verses and these concepts are not new to us. We've probably all heard, you reap what you sow. And we tend to hear in those words or those messages a message of individual retribution. Bad guys, in other words, will get what's coming to them. You reap what you sow. Tax cheats get jail time. You reap what you sow. Individuals will face the consequences of their own actions or decisions. You reap what you sow. And individual accountability is important, don't mistake me. But I think that there is a collective element to the tautology, you reap what you sow. It means that together, collectively, we reap what we sow. We become the people we set out to be. I'm reminded of the lyric from a song by Greg Lake of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You may have heard it recently. I wish you a hopeful Christmas. I wish you a brave New Year. All anguish, pain, and sadness, leave your heart. Let your road be clear. They said there'd be snow at Christmas. They said there'd be peace on earth. Hallelujah, Noel, be it heaven or hell, Christmas we get, we deserve. You reap what you sow. So if we as a society, as a nation, continue to sow division, collectively we will continue to reap dissension. If we sow arrogance and ignorance, we will not reap empathy. If we sow mistrust, we will not reap cooperation. If we sow intolerance, we will not reap kindness. If we sow the seeds of war, we will not reap peace. You don't plant bullets and grow daisies. You don't plant mean tweets and harvest meaningful dialogue. If you want to harvest flowers, you must plant flowers and expect flowers. Plant flowers everywhere. Plant flowers regardless. Plant flowers as a response to kindness, and plant them as a testament to goodness even amid the presence of evil. You get what you choose to plant. So now listen with fresh ears to a well-familiar parable. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is teaching his followers, and he says, listen, a sower went out to sow, to plant seeds. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds ate them up. And still, the sower sowed on. And other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly but were scorched by the sun, and with little root they withered away. The sower, meanwhile, was undeterred. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. But the sower did not plant thorns in response, nor did the sower consider the good seed poorly spent. The sower continued to sow. And other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain. For grain was what the sower was planting. You reap what you sow. And here's the astonishing surprise of the parable. Some seeds brought forth 100-fold, some 60, some 30, which even in itself is quite a lot. A beautiful, bountiful harvest, unexpectedly generous, inexplicably productive. Let those with ears to hear listen, Jesus says. So imagine if the sower had looked out and said, I see no reason to be optimistic about the harvest. There are seed-eating crows, and the ground is rocky, and there are thorns everywhere you look. Might as well plant nothing. Well, there's an important corollary to our earlier observation. You do not reap what you do not sow. You cannot reap when you do not sow. You will never reap where you do not sow. So in Jesus' parable, the sower goes out and scatters seed with abandon, indiscriminately, throwing fistfuls upon fistfuls of good seed as if there were an endless supply of seed. Because there is. Not every seed germinates. Not every seed produces, but you know what seed yields? Grain. And you know what grain yields? Seed. And you know what those seeds yield? More grain. Or if you're planting flowers, more flowers. I'm planting flowers. And that's what Jesus is trying to teach about the kingdom of God. It doesn't exist in the absence of evil. It is planted amid the evil. It doesn't exist in perfect conditions. It exists in an environment of gobbling birds and lousy soil and thorny thickets, but the sower sows with abandon and the harvest grows with abundance, and seed begets seed, begets seed, begets seed, begets seed. Now Jesus tells two more parables about seed. And they're in the same chapter as the parable of the sower, Matthew chapter 13. And the next one goes like this. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So the plants came up and bore grain, and the weeds came up as well. You reap what you sow. And some sow good, and some sow evil. And the servants come to the master in the parable and say, "What shall we do? You want us to root out the evil?" And the master replies essentially, "No, because in so doing you may do harm to the good. Worry about the good you have sown, not the evil sown by another. Simply sow good seed and trust the harvest." That's a hard thing to do. Trusting the harvest when the weeds are abounding. But plant flowers. Plant flowers. Keep planting flowers. And the final seed parable reminds us that hope starts very, very small. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It's the smallest of seeds, almost an afterthought. But when it's grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches, says Jesus. Birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Maybe amid its branches there is even and eventually a place for the seed-gobbling crows. So I'll end with a question for the new year. So what? What are we going to plant? It's an act of intention, you know. It's a daily decision. It's an ongoing activity. Parable 1, scatter broadly. Don't stint on the good seed you sow. Parable 2, don't let the weeds define the harvest. There will be weeds. The harvest will be plentiful. Parable number 3, small things yield great results. Microscopic mustard seeds get magnified miraculously. And finally, you do reap what you sow, but only if you sow it. Plant flowers. Bellis perennis. Eternal beauty. Bellis perennis. Amen.